All right, hello. We're
Good
doing
morning.
something a little different today. We're going to be streaming our podcast live. So for those who haven't, listened to our podcast before, welcome to Cowboy Smart Money. This is a podcast provided to enhance the financial strength and resilience of service members in the state of Wyoming. And I'm your host, Master Sergeant Jackie Marshall. I did that last time. And joining me today to co-host once again is Captain Clint Holscher. He is the comptroller for the Wyoming Air National Guard. And our guest again today, episode 7, is Mr. Glenn Lyons.
Good morning.
He serves as the personal financial counselor to service members in Wyoming, and he is also a chartered life underwriter and a chartered financial consultant with 30 years of experience, providing financial advice and counsel. So thank you both for being here again today. Like I said, it's episode 7, and we'll be discussing debt reduction. So this is a pretty big topic. So if you are watching online or listening, please ask Glenn any questions or any questions for Captain using the comment box below. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask us. And with this topic, I know most people have debt. I mean, we can't deny that. And we want to be debt free. So I feel today Glenn's going to ask or answer a lot of questions that will help people get on the right path, hopefully to be debt free.
I think I can do that.
Okay. So let's just go ahead and dive right into this unless anyone else has.
Yeah, I think we roll into it, and if questions come across, we'll jump to those, of course, and get those questions answered for folks. But we've got some basic things we want to talk about and try to discover more and learn about, and we'll just take it from there.
All right. Sounds great.
That sounds good to me.
All right, Glenn. So first question, what does it mean? What does the term debt reduction mean?
Okay, and so it really is pretty straightforward. It's really just like it sounds. It's reducing the amount of debt that you have, but more importantly, it's having a plan to reduce that debt and doing it on purpose and doing it with a goal in mind. And so when we talk about debt reduction, we look at the entire financial picture. And we come to an understanding about how we can reduce that debt in a way that doesn't destroy your lifestyle and still allows you some flexibility and most importantly, the ability to deal with life as it comes.
I imagine debt is, I'll use the analogy, debt is kind of like ice cream, that a little bit is good or helpful or is nice, but too much is probably very, very bad for you.
It depends on the debt.
Yeah, but how do I know? And that's the question, is how do I know if I have too much? How do I know if I'm in over my head when it comes to debt?
A lot of times it's a feeling in the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
Is what it really is.
It's when you're not sleeping at night.
Right.
That's a telltale sign.
That's really true. But some of the objective measurements of whether or not you've got too much debt, if you're borrowing money to pay your bills, a lot of times it is not unusual for me to see service members that will use one credit card to pay off another credit card or to pay down, make their minimum payment on another credit card. If you're struggling to make the mortgage, if you don't have sufficient funds in your savings account, if your relationship is being stressed by the amount of debt that you have.
Yeah, the mental side
absolutely.
of it.
Your mental health suffers for it. It goes into an entire range of things, but one of the measurements that you can use is what's called debt-to-income ratio. And debt-to-income ratio is calculated by dividing the amount that you're paying on a monthly basis into your income. And generally, what I generally use as a kind of a rule of thumb is what mortgage companies look at when you go to buy a house, and that's usually around 36%.
Okay.
And so if your debt payments are more than 36% of your income, you're probably stretching, and at that point, you're not going to be able to get a mortgage. It's going to impact any interest rates that you have going forward, things like that, because everybody does look at that.
Sure.
But those are the measurements I would look at to determine whether or not you've got too much debt.
Okay.
So going back to, we always talk about the Lamborghini
Yes,
purchase.
that's right.
So I purchased a Lamborghini, and that puts me in a lot of debt. So what are the consequences of having too much debt?
Too much debt. And by the way, I saw a Lamborghini in Office Depot the other day. It was a little box.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man.
I think I'm going to have to go back and get
I
it.
think you can fit one ream of paper in
yeah.
the trunk of a Lamborghini.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of
probably
trips.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the consequences of too much debt can be very, very serious. They can, as I indicated before, they can stress your relationship. They can stress your mental health. They can lead to substance abuse. All of those things can be a result of having too much debt. It can lead to repossessions if you're unable to pay for a car. One of the things that I thought was interesting was that lenders will loan money on a car quicker than they will loan money on they'll loan money on a car quicker than they'll loan money on a home.
Wow.
Because people will allow their home to go into repossession quicker than they'll allow their car because they've got to get to work.
Oh, okay.
And I
They're
thought that was
more
very
desperate to hang on to
interesting.
the car than their house. Wow.
And that is not a decision that you want to have to be making.
No.
Too much debt can lead to higher interest on any loans that you have. If you go to get a mortgage on a home and your debt to ratio income is too high, you may still get the loan, but you're not going to get the advantageous interest rate.
And that's all based on risk, right? The
It
lender
is.
says, well, this person has a lot of debt. They're kind of their income to debt payments. The payments are more risky. Therefore, we're going to have to kind of
Charge a higher
make
rate.
up the risk with a higher rate.
A higher interest rate. And when you're looking at a mortgage on a house or even a car, for instance, I saw one the other day that 20% interest rate on a car.
Whoa.
On a car.
Wow.
And when
Whoa.
you look at the amount of, in fact, the person that I was working with, because I asked, I said, do you know what the interest rate on your vehicle is? And they didn't know. And so we had to look it up. They were under the impression, after having left the dealership, their payment was almost $600, that they weren't paying any interest and that it was all going to principal.
Oh, wow.
And so we looked it up, and what we discovered was that the principal payment, I believe, was $266, and the rest of it was interest on
Oh,
the mortgage.
wow. Wow.
So it's going to take a while to pay that off. So having too much debt and impacting the interest rate on a home, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even a vehicle, which can certainly be tens of thousands of dollars in interest, can be very, very significant. In addition to that, it can impact your insurance rates. It can impact your ability to get a job, depending on what your credit score is. And most importantly, for the service members here in the Wyoming Army and Air National Guard, it can impact your security clearance and your ability to keep your job. So it's very important to understand what that is, and if you feel like you're getting into a problem, to do something about it.
You mentioned earlier different types of debt. Are there, what are the worst kinds? We're talking about possibly losing your security clearance or losing your house, or what are the bad kinds of debt? What are the kind of debts that you want to avoid?
Right. So the very top one on the list is, of course, payday loans.
Okay.
Okay, you want to avoid those things at all cost. I worked with a service member a couple of months ago who had used a payday loan to cover travel expenses. And of course, because of the interest rates and the way those things work, the amount of debt just continued to compound.
Sure.
And so those are the worst kinds of, that's the worst kind of debt to have that other than maybe Guido on the corner.
Right.
But the other piece that I see from time to time is buy here, pay here automobiles. Because oftentimes those can be very high interest, and they can be pretty dangerous debt to have. I remember when I first came to the Wyoming Military Department, I was working with an airman who had purchased a car at a buy here, pay here. And I was astounded because he had lost the car. And what had happened was he was having mechanical problems with the car. He had missed a couple of payments. He was paying it, I believe, every 2 weeks. And he would take the money right to the dealership. And what happened, he was having mechanical trouble with the car, and he called the dealership, and they told him if he would bring the car by, they would take a look at it for him. Well, he brought the car by, and when the guy got the keys, he told him that it was repossessed, took the car away from him. He had to argue with the dealership even to get his gear out of the trunk.
Wow.
Really?
That's exactly what happened, and it was just awful. So he had to walk home. He didn't have a car. He had, and if they repossess the car, they can come back on you for the difference that you owe.
Yeah.
So those are the worst kinds of debt. I would say store credit cards tend to not be great debt to have, and then high interest car loans, those can be a problem. High interest loans of any kind, those are bad debts to have.
Sure.
Okay, so moving on, with this question, I feel like not all debt is bad, but maybe because I'm talking about my student loan debt because I got an education, but Glenn, is all debt bad?
No, and for exactly what you're talking about, because there's a concept called leverage.
Okay.
And that's what you've done, is you have leveraged that debt into something more valuable.
Okay.
Most debt you use to buy depreciating consumer goods.
Stuff
Okay.
that's less
Automobiles.
worth in the future than it is
Oh,
now,
yeah.
so it
Absolutely.
loses value.
Yeah, it loses value.
Like, okay.
So automobiles, the new, the latest greatest TV on the wall that next year won't be worth.
Yeah.
You'll have to pay somebody to take it away.
I mean, phones are
Those
$1,000
kind-
a pop
right,
now.
Right, and I saw where Apple just last month reduced the resale, the trade-in value of their iPhones.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
jeez.
and so now you pay $1,000 for a phone, and you go to trade it in, and it's $150. And so when I was in private practice, I would have people come and talk to me about why they weren't getting quite as good a rate of return on their money as their buddy down the hall. He got 7 and they only got 6.
Oh,
But
yep.
but then when you look at the portfolio and you understand that they've just turned a $1,000 TV into a $150 paperweight, it sort of makes that argument negligible. Okay, and we do that all the time. We're all consumers.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
so student loans are good debt.
Okay.
Generally, a mortgage is good debt.
Okay.
Okay, because you're purchasing an appreciating asset, meaning it's going to grow in value. If you can purchase something that is going to grow in value over time, and you have to borrow money to do that. Sometimes that's a good thing to do. Sometimes starting a business and borrowing money to do that.
Okay.
Although there's certainly some significant risk in that.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Definitely.
I imagine, and just to rabbit trail away from our questions here a little bit, but you mentioned, mortgage payments and student loan payments. Those are usually multiple month payments. Those can be positive too because they can show a history of credit payments.
That's
They
correct.
show a
They do
history of
report that to the
wise
credit
use of credit, continuous payments,
Right.
and that helps build that credit profile and boost that credit score,
Right.
which once leveraged correctly will help you get better rates on loans in the future.
Yeah,
will
absolutely.
benefit you as a consumer to, if you do have those debts in place, to pay them on time and pay them correctly, and you reap the rewards for that.
And you're creating an asset on the balance sheet as
Yeah.
opposed to a liability.
Absolutely. What strategies are available to help me pay off my debt? I've dealt with the mental anguish. I've made the paperweight television mistake. The Lamborghinis in the car or in the driveway on blocks. I've drawn a line in the sand. It's time to get out of debt. What strategies are available? What can I
Never
do?
want to see a Lamborghini on
Yeah,
blocks.
I don't. Those would be small blocks. I don't think there's much room
Right, probably
below
right,
those.
Yeah.
You can use that ream of paper you got at Office Max. Put it up on-
What I usually recommend is a strategy called snowballing.
Okay.
And that is where you attack the lowest principal balance first, not
Okay.
the highest interest rate. And the reason that you do that, you go after the lowest balance first because financial planning is about money, but it's a lot about what happens between your ears.
The mental game.
The mental game, absolutely. And so when you pay off a low balance, you feel like you're making progress.
It's a victory.
And it absolutely is. And then in addition to that, what you can do once that's paid off is you take the amount of the money that you were paying on that smaller loan,
Sure.
and you apply it to the next smaller loan or to the next loan, and that snowballs until eventually you're paying a lot of money towards the bigger loan, as opposed to if you attack the biggest loan first. You've still got the monkey on your back forever,
Yep.
And the mental side of it is defeating you.
Sure.
You're getting less bills in the mail, and so snowballing tends to work very well with people
Okay.
that stay with it. And one of the things that I would say is when I work with people, I'm not going to see you just one time and say, here's your plan, good luck. I'm going to have you come back in a month later and tell me how it's working. And a lot of times, I'm seeing people 2 and 3 years later. We're usually down to a semi-annual or quarterly basis. But having somebody to account to can be very valuable.
Yeah. So the snowball process is really as simple as getting a piece of paper, writing down all of your debts, the $200 on this credit card, the $700 owned on my phone, the $2,000 on this credit card, my student loan, my vehicle loan, my mortgage, and just the balance.
That's right.
And you look at the smallest balance, and that's the one. You still pay the minimums
pay the
and all of the
minimum.
minimums, but every spare dollar you can kind of rub 2 pennies together and conjure up goes towards that smallest balance, and you pay it off. And whatever that payment was, you roll it up to the next one.
That's correct.
And like you said, it snowballs. It begins to build and accelerate, and before you know it, you've knocked out all those small little yippy ankle dogs that are just yipping at you, pay me, pay me, pay me, and then you're tackling the big dogs that the car, the mortgage, and
But you've got a bigger number to throw at the big.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, and
that's right.
you have those mental victories of, wow, I paid off this, and I don't have to worry about that anymore, and suddenly there's 5 less bills in the mail every month.
That's right.
And you just have this confidence and this momentum going into it.
Exactly right.
It does feel good. Like I've done that with my student loans.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
There's some smaller ones but yeah, just to pay it off, you're like, oh, I feel so good. Just you're like, and it makes you feel better about moving forward. And you're like, again, like you said, get the monkey off your
Well,
back.
yeah, and when you're
you know?
every day you're having to make decisions of, oh, I'm hungry. There's Chick-fil-A. But you know what? I just paid off my credit card, and it
Yeah.
felt so good. You know what? I am gonna eat ramen again, or whatever it is, or go to the grocery store and
Yeah.
get something a little bit cheaper, because that's just $7 more I can roll. It becomes kind of a game where you just see, where can I just maximize paying off this debt,
Right.
and
No, that's really
you
true.
don't short yourself electricity and a roof over your head,
Exactly.
but you get that mental game of, I can do this, and I'm willing to make these small sacrifices because they will make big changes at the end of a month or the end of a year.
Absolutely do.
Exactly.
Certainly do.
So, Glenn, should I race to pay off all my debt as soon as possible, like my Lamborghini debt, or should I dip into my TSP, 401k, IRA, or other retirement savings to pay off my debt?
I would say that you only do those things in extreme cases.
Okay.
And occasionally I have told people that they should do that. But what the first step is understanding what your income and your expenses are. You have to understand that before you before you can begin to attack this problem. I'm a firm believer, and it certainly fits with the military ethos. You cannot make good decisions if you don't have good information, and so you have to have the best information that you can have, and that involves a thorough understanding of what all of your real expenses are. And we've talked about spending plans on this podcast before, and we can do another one on those. But understanding what those expenses are, and that includes maintenance on your vehicle, it includes your clothes, it includes gifts at Christmas time, non-emergencies.
Okay.
The other thing that I have found that goes a little against the common thought processes is that when you put that spending plan together, I will almost always incorporate some element of savings. And then what you end up with a number at the bottom is the way it works. And say that number's $500.
Okay.
Okay, you've got $500 left over after you figure out what all of your expenses are and what your income was. And you've got some debt and you're wanting to pay it off. Usually I will take 2/3 of that $500 and apply it to debt reduction.
Oh, okay.
And so I would go after, so let's say that the number is $350. I would add that to the minimum payment on my lowest balance, and I would begin to pay off the lowest balance.
Okay.
But I'd take that other $150 and put it in savings.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, in my experience, and I've been doing this for 31 years now,
Yeah.
what I found is that people that just pay off their debt and neglect their savings end up running the debt back up because something happens, something comes up, and they don't have a place to go to deal with it. So it goes back on the credit card. And that's where people come away feeling absolutely defeated. They go, well, we paid this all off, and now it's back. Well, the result may ultimately be the same, but the result in your head is different.
Okay.
If something breaks, you got to buy a new dishwasher, and you've got $600 in savings, you go there instead of putting it on the credit card.
Yeah.
It's not what you wanted to do,
No.
but it's better than putting it on the credit card, and primarily simply from the way you think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mental breathing room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that, yes, you absolutely race to pay off everything, but you do it with a strategy in mind that is well-rounded.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
I just keep thinking about how debt reduction is so much a dollar and cents game, but it is so much a philosophical and psychological game as
Yeah.
well.
There's an entire field of financial planning called behavioral finance.
Really.
And it
Oh,
literally is. It's about how you think about money.
Okay.
And so much of what we do is habit,
Yeah.
whether it's purchasing or saving, and building the correct habits. And it takes a while because you've been doing what you've done for a while now,
Yeah.
Right.
But once you establish those habits and the way you think about the money, it makes all the difference in the world.
Wow. Is there ever a circumstance or situation where I should take out more debt to pay off debt, or take out a loan or borrow money to pay off debt?
There are circumstances. What a lot of people ask is if they should take a home equity loan
Okay.
to pay off the credit cards. And my answer to that is almost always no. Simply because in my experience, they run the credit cards back up.
Right.
You've converted unsecured debt into secured debt. You've converted generally short-term debt into very long-term debt. And so I don't recommend that. Occasionally, I'll run across a situation where it does make sense to borrow from the thrift savings plan at 2% to pay off a significant balance on a credit card, or if you're in collection and we've got issues with security clearances and the wolf is essentially at the door,
Right.
then that can be a way to do that. You have to be very careful with that, though, because that has to be repaid within 5 years.
Oh,
Sure.
yes.
And if it's not, it's treated as a distribution. TSP does have another option called a hardship withdrawal that you can exercise to alleviate debt as well. But again, what you're doing is you're wrecking your retirement plan here because
Yeah.
of some of your short-term decisions. However, when I work with people, I don't worry so much about what they've done because we can't change that. What I worry about is what can we do going forward,
Right.
and what's going to be the best approach. So occasionally, yes, I will recommend borrowing against thrift savings plan. Almost always, I will recommend against a mortgage loan
Okay.
or home equity line to pay off debt. But occasionally, yes.
And that's because when you say you're taking non-secured debt, you're taking a credit card payment, which again, there's no collateral tied to it. It's
Right.
just the credit card.
Right.
And if you roll that over to your house,
Nowhere to live.
exactly. So that's compounds your problems and your payment
right.
issues.
It would be
And so,
better to have your house paid
Yes.
and have your credit card in collection than it would be to have the credit card paid off and not be able to make the loan payment on the house
most certainly.
or the car.
Right.
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 So we're getting through this pretty quickly today. It seems like it's going by fast. But so moving on, Glenn, what are some ways that people get themselves in trouble with debt? We've talked about a few earlier, but what are some other ones that you encounter quite a bit?
So Captain Holscher, when Captain Holscher put some of these questions together, I think all of these questions, and one of the things that you wanted to talk about, I know with this, was school loans, payday loans, credit cards, co-signing on loans, and do these things get you into trouble? And absolutely they can.
Okay.
But what gets you into trouble mostly is simply not having a plan before you go into debt.
Right.
Okay, if you don't have a plan, this can very quickly overwhelm you because it's very easy to borrow money. And you take that card and you swipe it. It's not even like spending money. It's out there in the ozone somewhere. And
I mean, they even hit you up at the cash register.
Yes.
Do you want to apply? Do you want to save 10%
Absolutely.
today?
Yeah.
And so it's literally, it only takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So they're willing to
Like,
give you
oh.
several thousands of dollars worth of credit
Like, here you
within
go.
3 minutes of time at the cash register.
right. Well, and a lot of retailers are actually making more money lending money than they are selling merchandise.
Really?
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, that's why they
Yeah,
do it.
exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And they know that if you're a day late on your payment, they slap you with a $30 late fee.
Yep.
Which if you owe $100, a $30 late fee is a 30%
30% interest rate.
immediately.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's exactly right. Actually, it's higher than that if you pay the balance off in a month. That's several 100%.
Oh, yeah, because it's not over a year,
It's
it's
not over a year.
1 month.
That's right.
Wow.
But the biggest way to get into trouble with debt is not having a good plan, impulse spending. As you mentioned, at the cash register, well, there's no reason that you can't get that ring. It's a beautiful ring,
Yeah.
and we'll finance it for you.
Yeah.
In fact, it's 0% for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've had some economics classes in my time, and I know there's no free lunch. And so what that means is that they've already priced it into the cost of the ring.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, because they're not loaning you money for free. Nobody does that. It's already priced into the cost of the product. But if you don't have that plan, if you let me look at student loans for a minute, and that is you take out a student loan, but you haven't done your homework. And what I advise people that talk to me about student loans is that you start at the end and work backwards. You find out what kind of education you need for the job that you want. You go talk to the employer, and you study the field, and you find out exactly what degree you need. Because if you end up with a a degree in underwater basket weaving, right?
Yeah.
And you
Hey, that's the
incurred
degree I have. No, I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Sorry,
I'm just
sorry.
kidding. Just kidding.
If you incur, there was an NPR article. I thought it was just absolutely fascinating. But it talked about the degrees that particularly women tend to get in college, and there's an inordinate, I guess, from my perspective and from theirs, amount of psychology degrees that are pursued in college. And the cost, and it doesn't matter what gender you are, but if you pursue a psychology degree, your starting salary when you graduate is going to be $30,000 to $40,000, and that education is going to cost you $50,000 to $60,000. Okay.
Yeah.
A petroleum engineer starts at $120 for that same $50,000 to $60,000. And so what you really have to understand is, am I going to be able to recover the cost of that education?
Yeah.
We see it in the medical field now.
Yeah.
The cost of becoming a physician
Yeah.
or an assistant or a nurse practitioner, $100,000 to get that education. How long is it going to take you to recover that?
Exactly.
I've talked to doctors who literally didn't know how they were going to continue to stay in practice because of the cost of the student loan.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend whose sister went to medical school, and I think she had like a $500,000 loan, to get her through med school and then her residency. So this is 8 years.
Right.
But great, you're a newly minted physician. You have $500,000 worth of school loan debt.
Yeah, veterinarians, same
Yeah.
thing,
It's
$500,000.
It's like you're just working to pay off the loan.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all you're doing.
And so yes, there are some kinds of loans that will get you into trouble. Generally, if you do your research, a student loan can be a great thing because you do get an education, you get you leverage that money into a good paying job, and there are several ways to pay that off. There are lots of options to do that, but you do have to be careful with it. Payday loans absolutely will get you into trouble quicker than anything I can think of.
Okay.
Some of these credit cards, high interest car loans. Most of the work that I do with people in debt tends to center around cars.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so
Okay.
car loans can be a real issue.
And cars are an emotional thing. It's something I think as Americans, it's a right, it's a call to action that I need this brand new fancy car that we're constantly being marketed at. So I'm not surprised that cars are a problem. And they make it, again, easy. Just sign here, 0% interest. Oh, we'll stretch this out over 84 months. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 96-month loans now on
probably are.
cars, and
Some of these trucks that I see are selling for $60,000, $70,000.
Right.
And you're looking at an $800-900 a month payment plus insurance.
Yeah.
Plus license plates. You've got to pay sales tax
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
It could be a significant amount of money.
And then your insurance
Yes.
on a new
And
car.
So what I
Yeah.
generally tell the people that I work with is find a good used car with low miles, something that's still in warranty. Let somebody else take the depreciation for it. And make sure before you go in that you know exactly what you're going to spend. On it.
Yep. Go in with a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't let the dealer walk you to the $70,000 truck and say,
Right.
"Oh, we can make this.
We can make this
How much
work.
can you spend a month?
Yeah.
We can make
Right.
that work."
Yeah,
Right,
what are you looking
right.
to spend?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We've talked a lot about just things you can do and action plans, but for those who are maybe listening to this right now, or sadly maybe even suffering in silence, if you hear this or if you're in this situation and you want help or you need help, Glenn, what do you do? Who do I go to? What steps can I take to have someone, an expert, assist me? Either calculate, am I upside down in my debt amount? Do I have bad debt? How do I tackle this? Or even just formulate a game plan to begin knocking it out. Who do I go to?
I don't mean to sound self-serving, but the first person you should call is me.
Yeah.
My salary is paid by the Wyoming Military Department and the Department of Defense. I'm not here to sell you anything. There's no cost involved for seeking my advice. And if I can't help you, then I can direct you to someone that might. I encounter from time to time people that go to these debt consolidation services, and usually there's a cost with that. And it's going to, even if you're in collection, it still impacts your credit score when you go to the debt collection service. I would rather see, even if you're in collection, I would rather see us put together a plan that deals with small debts and begins to knock them out. The others may end up staying in collection. It's not going to hurt you any worse than it's already hurt you.
Right.
And approaching it that way as opposed to having yet another hand in your pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Because those companies don't work for free.
Right.
There is a cost involved in doing it, and sometimes many, many years of dealing with that. Whereas if you just had a good plan, you might be able to shorten up that time frame.
Yeah.
So I would say the first person that you should get a hold of is me. And I can be reached at 970-980-9184. That is my cell number. My office number is 772-5362. That does forward to my cell phone, so either way you go, you're going to get me.
Yeah.
And if I am not available, I'll return the call. Just leave me a message. It's all confidential. It's all at no cost, and I'm pretty good at what I do.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. Yeah. So you guys heard it. If you need help, Glenn's here for you, and not just in regards to debt reduction. If you haven't listened to any of the other podcasts, he can help you with your thrift savings plan, preparing for retirement.
Right.
I'm pitching to our previous podcast,
Yeah.
but he's here for you. And again,
Life insurance,
yes.
putting together a good spending plan.
Exactly.
Debt reduction. If it's got to do with money, I've probably seen it.
So stop being your head against the wall if you are right now and you need help. Glenn's here for you. And remember, he is, just like he said, you can schedule a personal, confidential, and a no-cost appointment with Glenn in person or phone or Skype.
Yeah, if, one of the purposes of this podcast is to reach out to people who are not in the Cheyenne area, in the southeastern corner of the state. And I do work with people via Skype, via FaceTime on the phone, or just a phone call. We can figure out how to make this work for the service members all across the state, and that's the whole point of this.
Definitely.
And I just want to add, we've talked a lot about the trouble debt can get you into, but I know there are debt conquering success stories out there. I know there are people in the military department or people just listening to this podcast that have found themselves in trouble and pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and actioned a plan that they are now winning. The debt's paid off, they're now saving, or they've been able to pay off 3 or 4 debts and they're now tackling the next big one. Kudos to you, A. Congratulations. I know it is tough. I know it is a mental game. But B, we would love to hear your story. We would love to have you leave us a note on Facebook, reach out to the Public Affairs Office, call Glenn, email Glenn. Let us know how you did it. Let us know, your struggles, your wins. We would love to share that. We'd love to hear from you. We would also love to just create a community.
Yes.
Via Facebook or through those out there. So if you have questions, reach out, call Glenn, post it on Facebook. You could remain as kind of anonymous as you want to. No need to go into your personal business. But if you have any general questions or some just basic things you want to just throw out there and get the community's feedback, get our feedback, we would just love to have you post that. We'd love to hear from you.
Definitely.
And I like to take the approach that I learn something new every day, or I try. If I don't, I've missed something.
Right.
And so, I don't have all the answers. I have a lot of experience, but if somebody else has got an answer, something that worked for them, and I don't know about it, and I won't know until you tell me.
Exactly.
Please let me know, because then I can use that to benefit other people.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you have some tip that you use to prevent yourself from buying the new iPhone, whenever you get tempted and you're in Walmart, and say, no, my 6-month-old phone is okay, share that with us. We want to know how we can conquer debt, and win together.
Exactly.
I see where the iPhone 4, I think it's the 4 or the 5, is now selling on eBay for over $1,000 because people actually liked it better.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there you go.
There you go. Make money off your old iPhone.
There
if
you
have
go.
that at home.
Never
There's
throw
your
them
tip.
away.
Well, new isn't always, I guess, the moral of that story is that, sometimes you got to be careful what you wish for because you might get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going to wrap up. That was another great podcast. And again, if you have a testimonial you'd like to share with us, let us know. Also, if you have any ideas or any topics, financial topics that you want to hear Glenn and Captain Holscher answer, let us know. Write in the comments or email us at wyoguard@gmail.com or just call us up here at the Public Affairs Office. We'll get your next topic on our schedule for a podcast. And again, remember, listen to any of our past podcasts or download them wherever you listen to podcasts because we're everywhere now. And also check us out on the Wyoming Military Department app. Thank you again for listening. Thank you both for being here.
Well, yeah, and just real fast, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm going to sing your praises.
Yes.
Master Sergeant Marshall has worked her tail
She has
off
done a job.
to not only get this podcast recorded and get it out there, but you are the one that made that available on iTunes and Stitcher and Google and
Trying.
Amazon and those places.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
done a tremendous amount, not only to help Glenn and I through this and get this started, but for the men and women out there listening that are in the military department or just enjoying this podcast and the Facebook groups and everything. Thank you. Because
You're
you have
welcome.
done a tremendous amount.
Thank
and
you.
It's my pleasure.
We sincerely appreciate it. So everybody get on Facebook and send Sergeant Marshall some love.
I would also add, if you're a family member of men or women in the military department, I am available to you. If you've got a soldier or an airman that's deployed and you still want to have a conversation, I don't have to have that conversation with just the service member. I can work with the family members as well. So please take advantage of what I do.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both. And thank you again for taking time out of your day for doing this and continuing to build the financial strength and resilience of service members and family members of service members in the state of Wyoming.
They all pay the price.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Master Sergeant.
So we will end this podcast now and thank you all for watching.
Thanks, everybody.